I was gonna say you had a thought before, Isaiah. I didn't want
yeah. So, what are your thoughts about giving feats as like downtime stuff?
You've brought this up to me multiple times, and I'm torn on it.
I think you should 100% be able to do it.
So, I feel like it depends on the amount of downtime. Because
I feel
training.
It has to be hard,
So,
right?
It would have to be something. It would have to be something like you need to find a trainer first of all. Second of all, it should either be the length of training a skill, so you have proficiency in it, or armor or whatever, or double it, because it shouldn't just be given so freely that you just have it, but it should also be attainable.
Double what?
Double the length of the training it takes, or the time it takes to train for a proficiency, which is 10 weeks.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm mixed on it.
I'm kind of torn on the trainer thing. Go on, Matt.
No, I was just gonna say I'm mixed on it because like because I think we've had this like offline conversation about it where it's like, feats as rewards instead of like magic items and stuff, like that could be cool. Or like what's his name on YouTube, the DM coach, he does these things called like bonus level up perks. And so when a player like levels up, he'll give them like a new basically like a mini feat type of deal. And those are cool. And I feel like if you want to be like really nice to your players, or you just are a player specifically, like I can't, they tell you about their build and they're like, I can't wait to get this one feat, but I don't know, it conflicts with the other things, and then they do something really cool in game, and then as a DM you're just like, yeah, fuck it, I'll just reward you the feat. So I think it's cool, but downtime training for it, I don't know why, but I'm kind of mixed on that. I can't put it into word where it's like, if I just train really hard, I don't know what's a good example of like a weird one with feat. I'll have a lot of health because I'm tough now, and you're like, all right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that does make sense, right? Like if you want to.
Actually, fit it. Go ahead. I have a couple of things, but go ahead.
Because I was going to say, like, specifically for some of them, like, you can make a very good argument that like sharpshooter could take you like 6 months or like 3 months of like nonstop training, right? Because all sharpshooter is the ability to get more, is in flavor. It's the ability to get more accurate shots on a dime, right? Like you don't have the time to you don't have to worry about being like, okay, I got to line the shot up, so you can make it to aim for the eye. Sharpshooter is basically like you're just trusting the bow to do the work. Or sorry, you're doing more than just trusting the bow to do the work. Like you're setting your pace and all that. Same thing for like magic initiate, right? Like I guess the idea of why you could argue that magic initiate is something that you could theoretically do alone is you're just doing cantrips, right? Like cantrips are supposed to be easy tricks that every wizard knows. So if it's the equivalent of like teaching yourself a magic 101 course. And you can only do it once a day because maybe you don't have mana or access to the weave or whatever you want to use for your magic system.
Yeah, I ran out of blue juice.
Yeah.
No, not the blue juice.
So I got you, Isaiah. I'm about to hit you with a couple. Okay. Right? So here's the thing. Yeah. So, all right. Problem number one. Yeah. I feel like if you're going to get a feat from downtime stuff, it needs to take a while. And I think it needs to be fairly costly because level ups, right? Because the standard way to get a feat at the moment, right? Because there is no rule for feats outside of leveling up. The standard rule is I level up and I am foregoing something to get this feat, and I'm only getting it every couple of levels. So that's a pretty big time investment. So if you're going to say, all right, we're going to ignore the level up time investment, there has to be some other pretty hefty investment to do it on downtime, right? You can't just be like, all right, you trained for a week, now you have the tough feat. Like that's like, you can't hand it out like candy, right? Because that's just going to get silly for a number of reasons. So that's problem number one. And Sam had a good point. There is the rules for training to get to learn a language or a tool proficiency. So you could modify those. The rule for that by default is, like Sam said, it's 10 work weeks and then it's 25 gold per work week. So 250 gold if you want to like learn how to use lockpicking tool, thieves tools. Okay, so maybe for a feat, I would say 500 gold and 10 weeks or something like that. Or maybe I would just make it 20 weeks and keep the price the same, you know, something like that. So there's that. The next thing is the training. The idea of training for some of the, you're right, Isaiah, for stuff like sharpshooter makes perfect sense. For stuff like chef makes perfect sense. I just cook like an animal for 10 weeks and now I'm just a beast at cook. Makes perfect sense. Fey touched, however, when you get into some of them, they get a little weird because Fey touched is your exposure to the Fey Wild's magic has changed you. That's not really a thing you could train, right? There's also what's it called? Shadow touch, which is the Shadowfell's magic has changed you. There's things like the telekinetic one, telekinetic and telepathic. Those are just, you just have the force, essentially, you know, like, so some of them, the idea of training is a little iffy. And then also, do you allow training for racials, the racial feats, right? That's another weird thing, because like,
I think it depends on the racial treat at that point. Feat, not treat.
Like wood elf magic, right? Can you just learn wood elf magic? Maybe, you know? If you're just doing it at your table, this is not as big of a deal because you can kind of adjudicate these sort of things on the fly at your personal table. But if we're talking about wizards implementing that as an official rule, they're going to have to take into account a lot of shit like this, you know?
They are, yeah. I also think like you can, because we do have
the lucky feat. How do you train the lucky feat? You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's fair.
I'm not against it wholeheartedly, but there's some roadblocks.
There are, but I think it's also worth bringing up, and this is not really a training thing, nor this is a on downtime situation, but it is worth noting that, like, I think a pretty easy way to sort of bring this over would be to just, like, jury rig the existing epic boon thing that they talk about in the DMG and just scale it down, because. Okay, do you want to take over then?
Wait, hold on. Quick question though. I haven't looked at the app. Oh, we're losing Sam to the internet goblins.
We are, yeah. That's why I was kind of hesitant to say anything.
What? You can clarify this for me, Isaiah. The epic boon shit is. My understanding was epic boons are essentially handed out as big story moment rewards at higher levels?
Yes.
Okay. So are you saying give players feats for like big story things? Is that what you're getting at?
You could, right? You could be like, oh, the what's a good feat? We'll do like shadow touch, right? Like if you're champion of the Raven Queen and you do something cool for the Raven Queen and she shows up and bonks you on the snoot and it's like shadow touched, congrats bud, and you're like, oh cool, I can just do Shadowfell shit now, sick, you know?
Yeah.
Or actually, I
have an example from my game. My players, they were hired by a wizard to go through this dungeon. They went through the dungeon, and afterwards he rewarded them with the magic initiate feat, and he even told them, like, you don't have to pick wizard, because I think that's one of the options with magic initiate, but they just got the feat for free for completing the dungeon and everything. And all the players were like, oh, sick, extra spells, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Here's what I'll say on the idea of just like handing out stuff like that, handing out anything as a big story reward. I'm basically willing to do literally anything as a story reward. That kind of thing, like, I don't even consider that it's like not even a concern in my head to be like, oh, should I hand this out for the story? I don't know if it makes sense to hand it out in the story, I'm gonna do it no matter what. I don't give a shit. The kind of things that I'm talking, the thing we were talking about is the idea of handing out a mechanical reward for mechanical actions. That's where I start being like, okay, does this make sense? How are we going to do this? What kind of things do we need in place? But yeah, if it's like you go to the Shadowfell, you have a crazy scene where the Raven Queen takes you as her chosen and you have the Shadow Touch feat, I'm 100% fine with doing that. That is totally cool. Like, go to town on that kind of shit. I mean, yeah, doing it in that fashion. But what you're talking about, Isaiah, where you're saying training feats on downtime, that is mechanical thing with mechanical reward. That is a situation where I want to like think about it a little bit more. You know what I mean? So I'm not anti the concept, but yeah, I think I'm a little more hesitant in that regard.
Fair enough. I mean, for me personally, I've seen it be done, and to be fair, the parties that I've been in that have done it do not go buck wild and try to get feats every 2 seconds. Like, there's this sort of understanding of like, I am letting you do this. Be very careful about how you approach this, because I can just take this feature away. And it's pretty much always gone pretty well. You know, people like right before like a big encounter, someone's like, oh, can I try to learn Magic Initiate in case I need to like cast Prestidigitation to wipe the blood off myself if we're like doing a heist or something like that. And then the GM has either been like, okay, like roll to see if you find a teacher, roll to see if they'll even try to teach you. Do you have the money to pay for it? Are you willing to take points of exhaustion? And you sort of have like this contractual back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's worked really well.